Hi, everyone. You are listening to Radio Cherry Bombe, and I'm your host, Kerry Diamond, coming to you from my hotel room at Fontainebleau, Las Vegas. I'm here at the resort to cover the opening of Cantina Contramar, the new restaurant from Chef Gabby Camera. It's a spin-off of sorts of her wildly popular Contramar restaurant in Mexico City. Cantina Contramar was designed by the architect Frida Escobedo, who is also designing a new wing of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, and she's working on the renovation of Centre Pompidou in Paris. Very impressive. Some of you know this, but the restaurant scene in Las Vegas has traditionally been very bro-y, so this opening is a big deal in Cherry Bombe's world. Be sure to check out our Instagram because we dropped our very first virtual cover, and it features Gabby, Frida, and Berta Gonzalez Nieves of Casa Dragones Tequila, photographed by Melanie Dunay, to celebrate the opening. Check out our Instagram and Substack throughout the week for more on the opening. Speaking of restaurants and amazing women on the restaurant scene, today's guest is Molly Irani, co-founder and chief culture officer of the award-winning Chai Pani Restaurant Group in Asheville, North Carolina. Back in 2009, Molly's life was looking a little different than it does today. She and her husband Meherwan were facing an uncertain economic future thanks to the impending recession, and he decided he wanted to open a restaurant. Molly was shocked and scared, but ultimately supportive. The pivot changed their lives, and she writes about it in her brand new book, Service Ready, a story of love, restaurants, and the power of hospitality. It's a great book if you work in hospitality or any customer-facing field. It's also just a terrific story about optimism and resilience. Stay tuned for my talk with Molly Irani. Our interview was recorded at Newsstand Studios at Rockefeller Center in New York City. Our Jubilee Conference is just a month away. It's happening on Saturday, April 25th at the Glass House in New York City, and we would love for you to join us. This is going to be our 15th in-person Jubilee, which I can't believe. Jubilee Day is all about community and connection and beautiful food and drink. We always have incredible speakers, and this year's won't be any different. We'll be announcing the talent very soon. If you've already gotten a ticket, thank you. We can't wait to see you. If not, tickets are on sale at cherrybombe.com. The link is in our show notes. If you're a paid Substack subscriber, be sure to use your Jubilee discount. Now, let's check in with today's guest. Molly Irani, welcome to Radio Cherry Bombe.
Hello. Thank you so much.
I have been so excited for this book ever since you told us about it at the open table lunch we did in Washington, D.C. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is one of the books that I wish I had when I was planning to open a restaurant.
Yeah.
It didn't work out for me the way it worked out for you, which is why I'm so glad that you put all this down, because anybody who's thinking of opening a restaurant, a bakery, or a cafe, or maybe any other kind of business, truly should give this book a read.
Thank you for saying that. It means the world to hear you say that.
Is your full-time home still in Asheville?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. We live full-time in Asheville. We have businesses in multiple cities at this
point. Tell us the cities that this spans to.
We now are in Asheville. We have a few businesses. We also have Spicewalla, which is based in Asheville. So we have our restaurant group headquarters are there, plus our restaurants, and Spicewalla is based there. We have Atlanta, Charlotte, Washington, D.C., and we're about to open in Raleigh.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, I love Raleigh.
Yeah, Raleigh's wonderful.
Shout out to Ashley Christensen.
Yes, hi, Ashley.
She does down there.
We love you.
It's so amazing to hear you say the term restaurant group, because reading your origin story and how it all came together, and when you read the beginning of the book, you might not expect that there would be the headquarters of your restaurant group anywhere in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. That is exactly why I wanted to write the book, because I felt that our version of the story, this sort of bootstrapped, start with nothing, you have no idea what the hell you're doing, you have zero money or experience, which honestly is how so many restaurants get started. And I felt like that version of the story was underrepresented in print. So when I was reading other inspirational business books about restaurants, they were very important, and I dog-eared every page, and I use them as their mandatory reading for all my managers. But I felt a little othered reading it because
we had the same exact. I mean, so much of our story in the beginning was the same. Yeah. I was 39, you were 39. Yep. I was doing this with my then partner. Thank God you guys are still together. I had no experience. You had some experience, and we'll talk about that. Mm-hmm. You did have experience, and I think I read, there was really only one book back then. Now there are two. Right. I felt the same way, that even though they're brilliant people at hospitality. There was a little bit of privilege that came with it, and I think rich parents and things like that. So there wasn't that maxing out the credit cards, just praying for money and all those things.
And the vulnerability that comes with that. The exposure, financial exposure, but emotional exposure also, because everything is on the line.
Absolutely.
It creates a different set of circumstances. It's like you're actually in a whole different landscape. Mm-hmm. That's what it felt like.
The money thing is so scary. I think I told you I was doing this because I want you to be in one of the essays that I write, but I'm doing this series for Cherry Bombe Substack called So You Want to Open a Restaurant. Mm-hmm. Because I really want people to not make the mistakes I made, because I just made one mistake after another. Yeah. I mean, it was cascading.
We
a series of mistakes.
It's failing forward, but it was still a lot of failure.
I failed forward, backwards, and sideways.
But here you are. I still call this
am.
Forward because it's a circuitous journey, but you got to this place where you're impacting so many people's ability to succeed now.
I got to a different place, yes. And some people have taken me to task for using the word failure, and maybe we can talk about that later. But you know what? It is what it is. Mm-hmm. So I had to embrace that. Let's talk about food. I always forget to talk about food because at the heart of this was your husband's passion for Indian food.
Yeah.
And Indian street food. So tell us a little bit about the food that you specialize in all your different places now.
Oh, goodness. Well, the first restaurant we started, Chai Pani Indian Street Food, we were really introducing this idea of Indian street food to the West. And I traveled to India throughout my life, but I could never eat the street food or I would have gotten sick. So Meherwan was introducing me to this cuisine that I had never had before, and it's so fantastic. So the thing about street food is it's very regional. So all across India, there's different types. Like, for example, if you take the dish called a bhel puri, it's a crunchy, munchy, savory, sweet, spicy, all-in-one, puffed rice and chutneys and different things mixed together depending on what region in India you are in. Certain regions will put peanuts in that. Certain regions don't. There's very regional dishes. But they are so crave-worthy that they're called chaat, C-H-A-A-T, because it makes you lick your fingers, which means licking of fingers. It's an incredible cuisine. So we really built our menu around chaat and street food, like street food sandwiches. But in order to make it a sit-down restaurant, we added in his mom's home cooking on a thali, which is really how Indian families eat in the home across India. And again, very regional. So depending on which part of India you're in, what's on the thali will look different.
What is a thali?
So thali actually means plate in Hindi. I keep making this gesture with my hands and I forget people can't see me. It's a giant plate. It's literally probably 12 inches. And it has a lip that's about an inch tall. So it's a metal plate with a right angle that comes up and makes the lip. And the reason for that is the plate becomes like your painter's palette. So on the plate will be rice, typically curry. In some regions, there'll be meat in the curry, and in other regions, it would be vegetarian or both. And then typically there's a vegetable, and then you've got condiments like raita, which cools it down, typically some type of slaw or kachumber, which is sort of a zesty, lighter, brighter flavor balancer. And you mix the things onto the rice. So it really is kind of a painter's palette. And it is the most incredible comfort food. It's the kind of thing that across India in homes you eat every day. It's your daily meal. And it really, at that time that we started, this was 2009, it wasn't represented very much in the restaurant space in the West.
But people loved it.
Yes, they did. Because it wasn't this really heavy version that what Meherwan was a little offended by at that time was that the food of his homeland is so diverse. It's really sort of like saying Indian food is almost like saying European food. It's so diverse based on the different regions. And even within a region, there's this family's version of garam masala is completely different than another family's version of garam masala based on their heritage and where their family lineage comes from. So he felt like it was a one-note party that was happening in Indian restaurants at that time. And he wanted to sort of expand the notes and really provide not only a lighter, brighter version, not just this sort of heavy, creamy, greasy, you need to take a nap afterwards kind that is how you eat in a wedding buffet, really, in India. It's a wedding buffet food. That's what migrated to the West. So he felt like he was doing something really radical and it turns out that he was, because people really responded to it. They had never experienced Indian food like that before at that time. Now there's all kinds of people doing it, which is super exciting because it feels like there's a movement happening now in that cuisine.
I'm going to jump ahead a little. So you're in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
You moved to Asheville for a number of reasons. You love it there. You are working part-time. You're raising your daughter. Your husband is working in luxury real estate. And it's clear that the economy is not headed in a good direction. You two, I think you take a vacation of sorts, and he tells you if he doesn't find a new job and something completely new to do within a few months, you might be ruined financially.
Yep. You have a great memory, Kerry. I'm so impressed.
I mean, it's heart-wrenching. You know, when you read that, no one wants to find themselves in that position. When he told you that, what went through your mind?
Well, at that moment in time, this was April that we had the conversation in 2009. So we were in a financial meltdown in our country. Businesses were starting to go under. The banks were starting to close. Real estate, people were going bankrupt. So the landscape that we were in was becoming clear. But he was selling these particular type of development in a gated community up in the mountains that felt a little insulated. So it was hitting that market later, and we were curious whether or not things would get resolved or fixed. We were all on the ride. We didn't know where it was going to go. And then he made this declaration, like, it's not going to get better. I need a new gig. And I need it, by the way, by August. And this was April. Or else we're going to be in trouble, because we were living off of savings at that point. He wasn't able to bring in any money as things started tanking.
So you're in the car as he tells you this.
Yes.
You and I, as discussed off mic, are an optimist, but I can't imagine that was easy news to get. What went through your mind?
No, it wasn't easy news. Although, you know how when someone speaks the inconvenient truth, but it's the truth and you know it? It was one of those moments. Wow, that's not a lot of time, honey. He had always had this entrepreneurial side to him. He has an entrepreneurial brain, always coming up with wild ideas. But he had an MBA, and he was focused in the tech sector. So getting into sales was sort of how life unfolds, right? He ended up not doing what he had studied in college. So he always had these ideas going in the back of his mind of, this is what I would do if I get to start my own business one day, which was really always the dream for him. He was going through the usual suspects, talking about, well, maybe I could create this kind of business in Asheville. I don't know if there's a market there for it, but he was running through the list. And in my mind, I felt nervous about the financial situation, but I felt relieved that we were addressing it in that moment. And I gave him a big speech about how he had rushed through college. He had come to the States to do his MBA. He had been a good little Indian boy and done everything his parents expected of him, and had gotten a job basically for a paycheck. And he was making...
He also fell in love with you.
Yes. He followed me to San Francisco, where the job market was terrible because everybody was out of work at the time in a different recession in the early 90s. I just said, this is kind of your chance. We're going to be jumping off of a financial cliff anyway, so you might as well jump towards something you're really passionate about, something you're excited about. And this is a moment, like, take the moment to think about it. And I meant it in the moment because he's always been such a practical person. And I felt like he deserved to have that moment to think about what he really wanted to do. Because I had spent years of my early 20s traveling around the world trying to think about what kind of life I wanted to build. And he had never taken that time for himself. He got real quiet and he listened, and we started kind of processing it, I think, inside of our head. And then we went home. So we went to bed, and I thought he had fallen asleep. I was reading a book. All of a sudden, he sat upright in bed and gasped. And it was like a light bulb had turned on inside of him. He was like glowing, a little bit mad eyes, but he was like wild with excitement. And he announces, I know what I want to do. And I was like, oh my God. Okay. I sat up, I woke up, I put the light on. He goes, I want to open an Indian street food restaurant in Asheville, North Carolina. And this bowled me over like I had been hit. Like somebody just whacked me in the head. I mean, I literally had to catch my breath. It knocked the breath out of me because I grew up in the restaurant business, in a family-run restaurant, and saw firsthand how hard it is. My parents' restaurant was very successful. It was very popular, but they worked themselves to the bone, and they didn't end up with a retirement plan that made any sense. So they had to basically sell the business. And even then, it wasn't enough. So I didn't really want to relive that story again, which is why I never got into the restaurant business. And we had never, ever, in any of our conversations, ever talked about opening a restaurant. We met waiting tables in a restaurant, but we never had a plan to open one, ever.
So you went from being very optimistic and supportive to a little bit less so.
Completely stunned.
What was your response?
I said, are you out of your effing mind? Forget everything I said about following your bliss. That is insane. Do you have any idea how hard the restaurant business is? No, forget no bliss. Forget about following your bliss. And yet I could see that this was one of those moments that you hear people talk about. Like you'll hear songwriters say, like, always carry the pen and paper and have the pencil in your back pocket so that when the whim strikes or the idea flies by in the middle of the night, you'll be ready to catch it. It was literally what happened. An idea flew by in the middle of the night that felt fully formed and fully energized. And the question was, were we going to be the ones to jump on that train? So I could see that something super intense was going on for him, and I was terrified. And that was when I got scared. But then we went through a process, and I basically said to him, look, if you want to get me on board with this idea, you have to sell me first. And he took his MBA background and he wrote a business plan that was so good that he not only sold me, but we started using it as a vehicle to raise money.
We'll be right back with today's guest. If you haven't checked out Cherry Bombe's Substack, you are in for a treat. We've got lots of free content for you, including recipes from all the folks you hear on Radio Cherry Bombe and She's My Cherry Pie, and our popular Friday newsletter. We also have a few things behind a paywall, like our cover stories and other content from our print magazine. You can subscribe for $6 a month or $55 per year and get all the great stories, plus access to our subscriber-only monthly meetings. The next one is coming up on April 1st at 3 p.m. on Zoom with today's Radio Cherry Bombe guest, Molly Irani. You also get discounts to events like Jubilee. If you're new to Substack, head to cherrybombe.substack.com to learn more and check it out. The link is in our show notes. Substack also has an app, but I love looking at it on my desktop. We have new content almost every day, lots of great art, so much to see. So take a look. You had asked him for a business plan, but you also said, you need to show me how we can exit this business.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so interesting when I can't remember whether I read it in the book first or heard it in another interview. And I thought, oh, that's so interesting. She's thinking so far ahead. But what you meant by an exit was, tell me how we're going to get to the point where not everything is on us.
Yes.
Because as you said, that's what you saw your mother and your stepfather go through.
Yeah.
And it didn't have a happy ending.
That's right. I needed him to show me the math on how does it work to exit the phase of the business where we are doing everything by ourselves forever and evermore, because that's the phase so many restaurateurs spend their entire careers in.
So many entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I bet tons of our entrepreneur friends out there right now are nodding.
Yeah. Yeah, it's real. So he had to do the math and show me what that looked like. So from the beginning, there was a big, grandiose idea that if everything worked out, we could scale this business. And that was when we would be able to build a team and have support and not be doing everything ourselves forever. I don't think he understood what doing everything yourself in a restaurant really feels like at the time. But, when you are passionate about something and you find an idea that you really believe in, that is what drives you through that phase. The problem is if you never get to leave that phase. Mm-hmm. That's where burnout happens.
Yeah. Unlike your husband, you had worked in restaurants. Mm-hmm. Meherwan never worked in restaurants, right?
I grew up in this family-run restaurant, mm-hmm. so I saw it from the inside out. I worked every station.
But you had another job.
Yes.
Where you were, we were making sandwiches or something.
There's a summer camp that I'm involved in every summer, and it's basically, we call it guerrilla cooking. It's basically like an extreme cooking challenge where you have a couple of hundred people gathering on a nature preserve in the middle of the summer heat on the coast of South Carolina, and you have to cook for them under extreme conditions without any facilities in a cook tent. This sounds crazy, but it's the most fun thing I've ever done in my whole life. It's an event that I've been committed to for over 30 years. So I had this thing in the back of my head about there's a magic that happens when you make food with love and you share it with love and you bring a community together around good food. I was really motivated by that. But the practicality of running a restaurant, neither of us had any professional background in. He had waited tables in my family's restaurant to get himself through his MBA program, which is how we met. but he was terrible. He was a terrible waiter. We probably both were. But we didn't have any professional background or training in it.
So he convinces you.
Yes.
You start raising money. So painful.
So painful.
But you did talk some people into giving you money.
Yeah.
How did you do it?
The very first investor that came in ended up becoming a partner in the business with us. His name's Isaac, and he's still working with us full time.
And his title now is?
He's VP of Growth. He basically manages all of our projects and helps us decide what cities we're going into and works with people on that.
Remarkable that he's still with you.
Yeah.
He was a school teacher when he gave you money.
Yeah, he was a teacher at the time. He had saved up a little bit of money by living really frugally by being a public school teacher. So this is what we were dealing with. We had zero money. We had invested all of our savings in buying our first house. The real estate market had crashed. Meherwan hadn't had a paycheck in like a year. I was working part-time as a professional organizer for artists. But in Asheville, it's like artists are literally starving artists, so nobody could afford to pay me.
I was just going to say, yeah, that doesn't scream lucrative.
No, worked great in the Bay Area, not so much in Asheville. So we were broke. Isaac came on board with the little bit of savings that he had. He was a family friend, and he had been taking these culture tours with gap year students around India. And we had this shared love of India. So he was so excited about this idea of trying to introduce Indian street food into our town. What started happening after that is we were trying to raise money the traditional. We went to the SBA. We did all the small business lenders. Meherwan would bring his business plan in. The SBA representative in our town said, this is a fantastic business plan. Can we use it as a model to teach people how to write business plans? But we can't give you any money because that was President Obama had just signed a bill to pass funding to basically get money flowing again. But it was going to take some time for that money to actually arrive at the SBA. Nobody knew how long it was going to take. Everything had been on lockdown. So there was no money to lend. We had to do complete grassroots. We wrote a letter, sent our business plan to a very small handful of friends and family, and we pieced together just enough money through literally $2,000 to $7,000 loans.
Was that really humbling, having to write those letters?
It was terrifying. It was so hard to ask for that. Also because most of our friends were like, what the hell are you talking? A restaurant? What? Since when did you want to open a restaurant? Because the last thing they heard, that was not the plan. So there was a lot of context that had to be given in this letter. And some very brave friends and family came on board and jumped on this adventure with us and took the ultimate risk.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
So you write these letters, you find a space. There's this couple that just bought a building, and there was a restaurant in the building, and you had to convince them because you weren't the only ones who wanted the spot. It had great foot traffic. So you bring the business plan and your charming selves to go convince them that you are the couple to roll the dice on. And they were kind of new landlords, right?
They had just bought this building. Yeah. And it's an old 1920s building in downtown Asheville that is in a great location, but it had housed a series of like sad, greasy spoon diners for years. It hadn't been popular in a really long time. So they were excited about re-energizing the space, taking care of the building. But Asheville doesn't have hardly any diversity. So we were some of the few Indians that live in town. And at that point, there wasn't a lot of Indians visiting Asheville. We were introducing this idea to the landlords, who are a very darling Southern couple from Atlanta who have no experience with Indian food. So it felt like such a long shot that they were going to buy into this idea and believe in us, who had no real professional background. And they did.
They apparently loved your business plan. You were the only ones who had a business plan.
We had a business plan.
That's one way to win over a landlord.
Exactly. And Sammy, who is the owner of the business, he was an entrepreneur himself. And he saw something in us. I think he recognized that fire and the excitement that we had about it. And what he said many years later was, it was the fact that you had salt and pepper on your business plan as one of your line item expenses that made me realize you were going to go at this. You might not know what you're doing, but you were going to approach it from the right perspective of level of detail that's needed to get a business to work. He saw a fellow entrepreneur in Meherwan, and they took the ultimate risk with us. So now it feels like they were in some ways our first investors because they gave us this space. And we could not have afforded to do this first restaurant if we didn't have that spot. Super cheap, very funky, turnkey.
We're going to talk about the funky because that was one of the scariest chapters in your book. But Meherwan did something else that really got their attention. not only were you two the only ones to have a business plan that you presented to them, you were the only ones who wrote a thank you note.
I think we were. I'm actually not sure if we were the only ones that wrote the note.
He said that in an interview.
Did he? Okay,
yes.
Then we probably were. But I do know that we poured our hearts out in that letter. And we really wrote that letter together thinking about, what does this mean to us? What do we want to say? What's on the line? How much do we believe in this idea? We said everything. And Meherwan is a good salesman. I felt like I was a good writer to be able to craft all of this into a beautiful letter for them, and it made a difference.
But it is amazing to think that something so important and life-changing can come down to saying thank you or not.
Yeah. I think it's such a good lesson.
And that goes back to why we're all in hospitality in the first place.
It's so true. Yeah, really true.
All right. So talk about the space. So
oh, gosh.
I had 4 different restaurants over the course of my restaurant adventure, and each of them was a build-out. And for folks who don't know what that means, we took a space that did not have a restaurant and put a restaurant in it. I do
adventurous.
Not recommend
so hard
that course of action at all. And when I think back, I'm like, I know why we did it. We fell in love with certain real estate in a certain block in a certain neighborhood. And be careful when you fall in love with real estate because you will really get your heart broken. You were more practical. There was a restaurant there, but it was a failing restaurant, and the inside hadn't really been touched or cleaned in so long.
It was so gross.
And just sorry, listeners, trigger warning.
Yeah.
Tell people just what
I'm glad you warned everybody. Mm-hmm. The grease and grime had gotten out of the kitchen and spread through the entire restaurant. I remember at one point we walked around the corner. There's a tiny little closet office, the size of a table, basically. There was a desk that had layers of grease on the desk inside the office. The handle to the bathroom door, you couldn't turn it because it was covered in sticky grease. It had gotten out. It was a greasy spoon, and the grease had taken over the entire space, and it smelled like stale French fries.
Oh, and was the one cook smoking in the kitchen?
I can see him now. He's standing over. Okay, so there's one person running. It's peak lunch hour.
God bless that guy.
I know.
That's rough.
Right? Spring outside in Asheville. The sidewalk is hopping. There's people everywhere. It's beautiful, sunny day. And the restaurant's dead. And we go in and there's one table and there's one person there working in this restaurant. And it's the manager / chef. And it's diner food. He is in the kitchen. Nobody's in the front of the house. We walk through. Nobody's there to greet us. Nothing's happening. He's standing over the fryer with the cigarette hanging out of his mouth with this tight, grimy white T-shirt. It was such an image. I'll never get it out of my head. And yet it was the perfect location. So we're looking at this and all we're seeing, the optimist in us in that moment, all we're seeing is opportunity, and the infrastructure was there. Back to your point earlier, the gift of the naivete of going into a restaurant when you've never done one before is you don't know what you don't know. You don't know how hard it's going to be. But we were lucky that we found a second generation space, because if we had done exactly what you said you did, we would have 100% failed. We eventually got to the place where we could do a build out, but that was years of learning on the ground of how to do it and how easily the expenses of that just skyrocket.
You bought all the fixtures and the equipment, so you had to make this stuff work.
Yes, we had to make it work, and it was all horrible. It was like cracked vinyl burgundy booths that were left over from the 70s. There was, this clunky wooden bar, like the rounded oak bars that were shellacked. And it had a awning over the bar that was this gross, smudgy, brown, beige canvas awning. And there was carpet.
Oh, the carpet part killed me.
There was industrial carpet.
Once upon a time, all restaurants were carpeted.
Oh, my God.
But you guys had to pull up all that carpet.
It was literally the grossest thing you can imagine. And the carpet was really what was holding the smell of decades of stale grease. It was horrible. So we are looking at this space and we're like, oh my God, this is going to be the creative challenge beyond belief, because nothing about the aesthetic of the place or the outdated, funky 80s diner chairs, none of it made sense in an Indian restaurant. So we knew we had a design challenge ahead of us, but we also had all the infrastructure we needed. And the only reason we could afford to do this is because we talked the owner of the business into, not the owner of the building, but the owner of that restaurant, into selling us everything and walking away. And he agreed to a payment plan. So we had just enough money to give him a down payment. And then I would literally go to this Greasy Dive biker bar, by the way, which was the other business that this gentleman owned in town. For a year, I had to hand deliver a check to him at the biker bar because we were paying off our debt. His agreement to this payment plan made it possible for us to open this restaurant for basically $60,000, which is, we didn't even have that much at the time.
Well, such a remarkable story that you were able to do this. And then I forget how many years later, you're standing on stage at the James Beard Awards, accepting an award for Outstanding Restaurant.
Outstanding Restaurant.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
We never would have imagined in the beginning that was possible. It wasn't even in the dream. It wasn't even part of what we thought was even in the realm of possibility for us. We were just trying to create the food that Meherwan missed, something that we felt our town needed, and something that we could ideally grow. But our version of growth it didn't involve any of that.
How many years from
So that was 2009.
Pulling the rug up at that restaurant to the awards?
2009, and then we won the award. It was the first James Beard Award after the pandemic.
2022. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Unbelievable. And now you're an author. You've got one of the few books on how to do it in the restaurant industry. And you're still married.
We're still married. That felt like the big win.
Congratulations. I mean, how many relationships does this industry destroy? I went through that.
It's really hard. It's really hard. And there's a real reason why it's hard. And I tried to tell the truth of it in the story. I didn't want to portray this like, yay, we made it. That was a cakewalk. Oh my goodness. No, it was so hard. We walked through fire and almost lost each other multiple times, but we held on tight enough. And I think the reason we made it through was because we had the team we had. We got lucky enough to start with some remarkable people. They were growing right along with us, falling in love with the business by accident, just like us, learning this industry alongside us. We were all growing into our positions together, and they were really phenomenal people. And so I was able to grow out of the role of he and I being in the operations, making all of the decisions together. If we kept trying to drive that boat together, we would have crashed. Like 100%. We would have crashed. It would have been awful. And awful for our people. It wouldn't have been a pleasurable experience.
So folks might not put all the pieces together, but, you're in Asheville. Asheville has been through a lot.
Yes.
Over the time period that you've opened your place. You talked about a winter storm that I'd forgotten about. You had the flooding. You had COVID. Everything that's going on with the economy right now. Yeah. How have you, again, I said, you're an optimist. That's so clear when you read the book. But that's enough to just grind down even the most optimistic human being. How did you and the Chai Pani team keep it together through all of that?
It's such a good question because I think it's kind of at the heart of what made us successful in the first place. And it really came down to building a culture that sustains people through whatever the hell you're going to face, because times are crazy and our business is not easy on a good day. Really, my role in the business was focused on what are the elements that contribute to a work culture that people want to be a part of and that sustains them and grows them into careers that are meaningful to them. And that was the part of the business that I was able to be focused on. Over time, everyone was contributing to it. Meherwan had his pieces. The people that were growing along with us had their pieces. But we fought for that culture. And people thought we were out of our minds in the beginning. I mean, we were constantly hiring people that had way more experience than we did in the industry. And they would come in and be like, you want me to talk about my feelings? Like, what? There's hysterical stories of 16 years of sort of unschooling people from classic restaurant management strategies, which was repress, command, control, toxic pressure, and indoctrinating them into a new way of being and a positive work environment. And how do we have each other's backs so that we can get through whatever the shift throws at us, whatever the weather throws at us, whatever natural disasters come at us, and whatever the world brings. We made it through because of our team. And at that point, I think in the beginning, those first couple of winters almost broke us. I remember Meherwan had a Jeep at the time, and Asheville had the worst winter in 30 years, our first winter in business. So everything was snowed under. People were without power. Our little restaurant somehow had power. That happened again 16 years later when Hurricane Helene happened. That same restaurant
You had
space.
power?
We had power at that spot. We had no water, but we had power.
For 50 days, right? No
Unbelievable.
water. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So back to the first winter, we had power downtown. So Meherwan and I got in his Jeep and rode over the snow and shoveled our street out because there was not enough snow plows. Like, we were in a mess. And just he and I opened the doors, and there was lines of people from the neighborhood walking in because they were like, "What? You have power? You have food?" So Meherwan feels like I have rosy memories of that, but his memory is it was really rough.
You've been through a lot, babe.
We've been through
It's really unbelievable. I want to talk about check-ins and checklists.
Yes.
Tell us how each of those things apply to what you've built.
Well, I think I said to you before, it's like two sides of the coin. You know, they're opposite pieces, but they both really matter. So check-ins are something that it started organically because my background was in psychology. So I was bringing
child psychology,
very helpful running restaurants. Turns out,
probably helpful running anything.
Yeah, it turns out I didn't realize that when I was studying it, but it's true. I was trying to create more humanistic management strategies in our business, and I was trying to teach the idea. My job became teaching the teachers, right? How do we teach young people how to lead? And how do we lead groups of people under high stressor environments? I don't call it high stress because I feel like it actually can be unbelievably fun when things are going well. But there's a lot of stressors that come at you in the restaurant business, and you have to develop the muscle for riding through it. And I was trying to teach our teams how to do that in a different way. So organically, I started having what I called check-ins with the team, which in the beginning was just Meherwan and I getting time one-on-one with every single employee. How are you? How's it going? What's going on? What's going well? What's hard for you about your job? What do you need? It was a way of developing like a mentoring relationship with everyone. And then as I started getting to the place where I was not running the floor anymore and I was teaching the teachers how to do that, it became more institutionalized. And we were able to really establish this as a practice, which there's been plenty of times in the past 16 years where we thought, we absolutely do not have time for check-ins. It is so hard. It's so complicated. We have 450 employees now or something. Like, how do you make this institutional to the point where it's automatically happening, but happening in the right ways? Super hard. But it's an investment of your time into your people. And it's a way of saying, without a doubt, the people in our business are our number one most important asset. And if we're going to have our people be the primary organizing principle of our business, we have to have that reflected in everything that we do, from our budgeting to how we spend our time as managers to what we're focused on. Obviously, there's financials. The business has to be making money. There's all kinds of things that matter. But those are just math. It's like, well, you can figure it out. You have to burn a lot of brain cells, but you can figure it out. This was harder because it was establishing a practice that was kind of unheard of in our industry at the time. Now it's becoming much more common. The idea of having a positive workplace, psychological safety. These used to be radical ideas in our business, and thank God they're not anymore. But learning how to do that in a restaurant space that doesn't have the infrastructure for this, we're not set up for this. I had to kind of think outside the box. So I established this as a practice, and now it happens a couple of times a year. I'm no longer the person doing the check-ins with all of the people, but everybody has a check-in with their supervisor a couple times a year.
How is that different from a quarterly review, which always makes people groan who work in corporations?
Yes, exactly. Well, I think having some kind of feedback loop is equally as important, because getting clear, honest, direct feedback is how you become successful in your career. That's the gold that everybody needs from their supervisors. A check-in is almost the opposite. It's asking the employee, how are you? How am I doing as your manager? What do you need from me to be successful in your work? There's also reviews and feedback loops. They can happen in the same thing, but they've got to have two separate shifts to that one check-in then if you're going to combine them. But really the check-in was a way of reversing the conversation and us doing a lot of active listening and teaching the art of active listening. How do you listen more, talk less? It's this basic idea that if we approach all of our high-stakes interactions in service from this perspective of having a curiosity to understand each other instead of a conviction to convince each other of our perspective or feedback or whatever. That's how you build a strong culture in a business. And that's how you build the kind of culture that sustains through hurricanes and floods and whatever the heck gets thrown at you.
How about checklists?
Checklists, it's such an obvious tool, right? Like every restaurant has checklists. There's pre-service checklists. There's, side work checklists, closing checklists.
Clipboard. How many
clipboards are hanging all over the place. We all have them. But what I discovered in my first year on the floor of managing the restaurant was how fast those checklists become totally useless as a tool. Either people are not trained on them properly and they're just checking the boxes and not actually doing what you've asked them to do, or the checklist itself becomes outdated because you have staffing changes or seasonal changes and it says to take the umbrellas in, but we're not using the patio. And so then people start ignoring the checklists and it falls away. But literally, the simplest thing of getting your systems organized. But I love to think about it like a kindergarten classroom where I just have this image of my daughter's kindergarten classroom where everything has a home, everything is labeled. The container for those things fits the space that it's supposed to live in, and it relaxes your mind. And that is how you set teams up to be able to do high volume, fast paced, super intense services. If they're running around looking for the supplies because they weren't stocked properly, it makes people spinny and flooded. It floods their nervous systems. So getting everything organized with really good checklists and having strong organizational systems, we got there over time. We were not there in the beginning. It was a big old mess, but we got there. And I think that is sort of how we can ask our team members to be able to do things like mind-blasting hospitality and go above and beyond to take care of your guests and each other in the space. How do you inspire people to want to work that hard and to show up in that way? They've got to be working in a supportive environment. The culture at work has got to feel good. And they've got to have what they need, where they need it, and when they need it. And all of those systems, the check-ins create the culture. It's one thing that creates the culture, the active listening. And then the other side of that is setting your spaces up so your people can succeed. That's such a big piece of restaurants because it's real estate in the restaurant space, right? It's like you're managing space and people in space. So that's a whole thing in restaurants that we had to learn a lot about it.
And when you don't have space, oh my gosh, I just think of like all our Brooklyn spaces.
Yes.
So tiny.
Well, exactly. Our first spot, I don't know if you caught this in the book or not, but the first Chai Pani had one table that could seat more than 4 people at a time.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
That was the restaurant that we won the James Beard Award in, which is why
what was your occupancy?
I think it was like 43 inside.
Okay.
Something like that.
See, I always think of the restaurants down there as so big.
No, it was
so
a tiny little, it was a lot like a Brooklyn restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
It was a tiny little 1926 building. The storage was downstairs. We had a dungeon where when it would rain, the wall was wet from
I
water.
hated going down the dungeon.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, congratulations to you and Meherwan on what you two have built. It is nothing short of remarkable. And I'm just getting to know you and I'm so proud of you two. It's
thank you so much.
So many of us I know and so many of our listeners know how hard it is.
Yeah.
So congrats again.
Thank
Let's
you.
do a little speed round.
Sure.
What beverage do you start the day with?
Oh, coffee, 100%. I actually make mine, it's an Americano, so I make mine with a little dash of cinnamon and a pinch of sea salt. I think that's a Mexican influence, but it takes a little bit of the bitterness out so I can drink it black.
Nice. What's always in your fridge?
Organic blueberries and yogurt. That's my go-to breakfast.
What was your favorite food as a child?
Oh, gosh. That's so hard because my mom was a phenomenal cook. Anything that my mom baked.
What is your favorite snack food?
Okay, I have to do a sweet and a savory because sweet for me, it's all about chocolate. I don't know how anybody does life without dark chocolate. That's my thing.
Do you have a favorite kind?
I don't have a particular favorite brand, but it's got to be really good organic dark chocolate. That's my go-to. I usually buy whichever one is on sale at the health food store, but I'm a bit addicted to dark chocolate. But
So you're a snob in search of a sale.
Yeah, 100%. And they're so expensive. That's why you have to find the ones on sale.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can be $14 for a bar of dark chocolate if you're not buying it at the right place at the right time. I wrote this book on an island in Greece. And that, I know, it really was a luxury thing to do. And it was amazing. And it was the only way that I could concentrate and turn off the restaurant noise and focus. But that place really inspired me for the mezza platter. this idea of like a plate of food that's snacky and savory and smoked fish and hummus and fresh feta from the farm with sliced vegetables. So that's my go-to like savory snack.
How long were you on this island writing the book? Oh my God,
it was such a dream. Well, I went for 3 weeks with my friend that went to art school on this particular very quiet island. She was going to do an artist residency, and she knew I was struggling to concentrate on writing this book proposal. She was like, you could come with me. We could get a 2-bedroom apartment together. And so we did. And I wrote the book proposal in 3 weeks, basically. Then I loved it so much, not just the culture and the place and the people, but the ability to be in a different time zone, far away from whatever the business needed from me, and far away from my own habit of injecting myself into conversations I didn't necessarily have to be in anymore, but it was just the habit of being in them.
I love that you had to remove yourself to another country.
It was a wonderful permission slip to do that. And I got the book deal. I sold the book proposal. I got a book deal. So that gave me the permission slip because now I had a deadline. I had to write this book.
Thank you, David Black.
Yes,
I saw he's
thank
your
you,
agent.
David Black.
Everybody loves David.
Oh, my goodness. He was such a champion for me in this book. And he honestly, who would have thought that a man would be the person to teach me the female voice that most needed to be told in our industry? But he did. He did do that. He pushed me to say the parts that I might not have decided to share. He saw the underrepresentation of that, and it impacted me.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, he sure is.
What's your favorite food film?
Like Water for Chocolate. I haven't actually seen it in a long time. Now I want to watch it again.
You know what? That's exactly what I was thinking when you said that. I was like, it's been years since I've seen that.
Me too.
Dream travel destination?
The Maldives. I almost made it there. I was backpacking in the Himalayas with my girlfriend at the time, and we wanted to go to the Maldives, but it was the early 90s. And at that time, the only way to get to the Maldives was on a fishing boat with 20 fishermen. And we thought, I don't know if that's a great idea for us to go on a fishing boat alone out in the middle of the Indian Ocean. So we didn't make it, but that's my goal, to get back.
See, you've always been making smart decisions, and that's helped you get to where you are today.
I don't know. A lot of it, honestly, is luck. It's something about that, like leaping towards the thing you want to do. I think of it like that game in the water, Marco Polo, warmer water, colder water. It's not like I ever really knew what I was doing. I just tried to always go to the warmer waters.
You know who's not into luck, though? Katie Button. She and I think she might have talked about that at Jubilee, that too many women attribute their success to luck.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I still think luck plays a big role.
I think it opens some doors. It's timing, right? The lucky part, you have to work so hard to be able to accomplish your dream. So the dream doesn't happen just because of a magic wand and luck. But there's something about timing, right? Like being ready when that window opens. That felt like the lucky part to me, that we happened to be paying attention to the fact that we were in a financial crisis and needed to do a new thing right when this vision hit him. Because if it had happened 5 years earlier for him, we never would have done it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, last question. I don't know what your answer is going to be. If you had to be trapped on a desert, you can't say your husband. If you had to be trapped on a desert island with one food celebrity, who would it be and why?
Okay. Bear with me for a second because I have to tell you about a dream that I just had because it's going to inform my why. It's going to give context for my why. I promise. I'm getting somewhere with this. I had this dream recently that I was on a deserted island. I had a deserted island dream, basically. In that dream, I'm on an island with my female friends, and the women are in charge of the island. The men are no longer allowed to be managing anything. The vision that I got is I'm standing on this beach, and there's lines of Viking ships coming to the shore because the world is on fire. Everything is a mess. There's world wars going on, and people are fleeing the world to come to this island where the women are in charge. We basically are forming like a new humanity.
This is your dream?
This is my dream.
Wow.
It knocked my socks off so much that I woke up from the dream and I was like, what was that? I needed to write it down because I was like, was that a vision? Was it a dream? What was that? So the image is like these Viking ships are coming. People are fleeing. New humanity. We're starting a new way of doing things. My friend Mara that I went to the Greek island with to write the book is standing there with a clipboard, checklists, and she's checking people in to the island. The men are allowed, men are invited, but the only job that they are allowed to do is play music or hunt fish. They're allowed to go spear hunting for the fish. That's the only thing that they were doing in the vision that I got. Okay, so In that moment, do you want to know what the soundtrack is playing? And this is what woke me up from the dream. The men are in a drumming circle playing the drum solo on Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight in the background of this dream. It was so dramatic. It was like a movie scene.
This is insane.
I can't believe it.
What did you have for dinner that night? My God.
I don't know, but it was wild.
I saw you have an Oura ring.
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
This thing
so
saved my life.
Yeah, mine
this
too,
thing
yeah.
really saved my sleep. It changed everything for me.
So you're getting more REM sleep, clearly.
Yes. I don't normally dream like this, I promise. It was such a dramatic moment. It felt like a movie clip. Okay, so I wake up from the dream. But you are asking me about a celebrity chef. So what comes to my mind is this. I would make one exception to the women being in charge rule. And if I had to start out on a desert island or deserted island or whatever it is with a celebrity chef, I would pick Jose Andres, because I just went through learning how to live after Hurricane Helene. We had to learn how to live without power, water, or cell phone service. And I was really freaking happy to see Jose dropping out of a helicopter into my town. So we started working with World Central Kitchen, and I got to know that organization. So here's my thing. I would go to the deserted island with Jose because he's totally bought into the new humanity. He is coming from this mindset already that if we view our neighbors as people we are responsible for, it would change the world. That's what his work is all about. So I would go to the island with Jose, and he would help me build the infrastructure. But Jose would be found because he would have a tracker on him because the world needs him. So nobody's going to let Jose disappear on an island. He's going to get tracked so people know where we are. We get found, and we start a new humanity on the island where everybody's taking care of each other and the women are in charge. And then Jose gets to take a break and just go spearfishing.
Oh, my gosh. I don't even know what to say to that, but that is incredible. I hope you continue to have dreams like this, because I do think this goes beyond dream. You might be a prophet or some kind of visionary.
Wouldn't it be a fun island, though? Can you imagine?
Well, it reminded me of the scene in Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
The Williams sisters had roles. It's the all-women island. There's a name for it, which I forget. But I remember watching, I think it was the first Wonder Woman, and I'm like, I want to live on that island.
I know.
Sometimes Cherry Bombe feels like that island.
It is.
Good.
You're creating your own island. And honestly, that's the closest we have. The funny thing is, I told my girlfriends about this dream, and they were like, I mean, we kind of are doing that within our own bubbles. We're creating our own little realities as much as we can. And that's the gift of running this business, is we get to create that at work.
I'm waiting for the matriarchy. Well, you said the world needs Jose Andres, but I think it's clear the world needs you too, Molly.
Oh, thank you, Kerry.
Thank you
so sweet of you.
Thank you for putting this book into the world and sharing your wisdom. And I hope everybody who is in the food business and who has their own business or is an entrepreneur or entrepreneur aspiring picks up Service Ready.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here.
What an honor.
That's it for today's show. Thank you to Molly Irani for joining me. Make sure to pick up a copy of Service Ready at your favorite local bookstore. And don't forget, Molly is our guest at this Wednesday's member meeting. Check out the Cherry Bombe Substack for more details. The link is in our show notes. And Jubilee is right around the corner. I hope to see you there. Our theme song is by the band Tra La La. Joseph Hazen is a studio engineer for Newsstand Studios at Rockefeller Center. Our producers are Catherine Baker and Jenna Sadu. Our executive assistant is Bridget Pittman. And our head of partnerships is Rachel Close. Thanks for listening, everybody. You're the bomb.